Good morning, Rajiv.
Morning, Kiran.
Thank you very much. I can't tell you how privileged we are to have one of the world's best researchers, writers, award winning professors on today's great event on the you were there with us. You have been a well-wisher of Chlorophyll and you were there with us on our 15th birthday, and now you are here on our 25th birthday.
Let me just say it's a pleasure for me and it's an honor for me to be with you the second time to celebrate your this time your 25th anniversary with you.
Thank you. So my colleague uh, Khushbu has already introduced you to the audience, but I think there is some recent stuff you have been doing which is not there out in public media. So I think you should start. I mean, besides the fellowship that you recently got in last year in November 2023, but there are some really cool stuff that you're involved in. So why don't you speak a little bit about that before we come to the rest of the agenda?
Okay, well, thank you for asking. So I do research on how you make brands strong. In
Yeah.
fact, I'm actually writing a book right now on building strong brands. We can talk about that later.
Okay.
But two of my research projects have dealt with. The first one deals with how do you create brands that consumers love? And the phrase brand love has been bandied about for a very long time in the
Yes.
advertising and branding business, but it's always been in a very loose, hand waving sort of way. And so what we did, me and my co-authors and I, we identified the actual building blocks for brand love
Wonderful.
and came up with strategies and tactics and so on. So that was one big piece of work. That was actually about 10 years ago. And it's had a lot of impact in both academic and practitioner circles. And then the second piece of work, the more recent work, 2019, was on brand coolness. You know, ever since I was a brand manager, uh, brand managers have always wanted to understand what makes a brand cool so that they can make their brands cool. And again, in a similar fashion, people's understanding of what makes a brand cool has been very vague and amorphous.
Correct.
And so,
Correct.
again, what we did with my co-authors and I is we identified the building blocks what makes a brand cool. So both of these are academically published pieces. And if anyone is interested, you know, you can write to me or something and I can send you the
Mhm.
article.
So these the data for this Rajiv is global, or these are
Uh,
specific
it's no,
market?
it's based mostly on an American consumer sample, though the brand love data is an American consumer sample. The brand coolness data actually also included consumers from many European countries.
Oh, that's wonderful. That we would love to.
You know, in fact, what I can do is I can send these PDFs to you, and
Yeah.
then you decide how you can disseminate them if anyone is interested.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We'd love to have it. We have a section of Chlorophyll called Chlorophyll Academe. This is a
Okay.
name invented by Anand Halve, your erstwhile friend. So,
Mhm.
since we are on the subject, any memories of Anand Halve, otherwise known as Andy? Your
Yes, I, with great affection, I remember him with great affection and warmth. And what I remember Andy for, apart from his amazing intelligence and deep insights, was his sense of humor and his modesty. I mean, the man was so smart, wrote such terrific books, and co-founded Chlorophyll with you. But he was such a modest guy, and I really, really appreciated that. I also remember vividly his genuine respect for the needs of owners of small businesses in India who came from sort of humble backgrounds, people who had not been part of this English speaking upper class that I grew up in when I was there, you know, 40, 50 years ago. And Andy had such a tight rapport with them, such strong empathy for them, with them. And I really love that. And in fact, that sort of leads to a question that I have for you is when Andy and you and others co-founded Chlorophyll, 25 years ago, what was the vision that you guys had? And how has that evolved? Has it stayed the same? Has it changed? Maybe you could speak for a little while on that.
So I'm going to tell you a little secret about Andy before I answer that question. I
Uh-huh.
think you knew that Andy never possessed a pair of jeans.
Is that right?
He didn't like casual stuff, so he didn't like jeans and t-shirt, but he
Uh-huh.
liked wearing keds. So
Oh,
he
yeah.
was the first in Chlorophyll to wear keds with formal trousers. And when people said,
Okay.
"We are not very sure this goes," he said, "Who cares? This is my style." So that,
He certainly had his unique style. Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So to answer your question, Rajiv, uh, when we started on day one, it was we are we are a brand consultancy. We are not an ad agency.
Hmm.
We were actually trying too hard to say we are not an ad agency. That we are far more upstream. That
Mm-hmm.
we have processes and models. Remember that we created Andy and I created this model called Anthrop. We said Capferer may not be right for India and Aker may not be right for India, and therefore we evolved this our own models. So that shifted over time, and we grew a little more self-assured that we don't have to go out and shout that we are not an ad agency, we are a brand consultancy, and people started understanding what we were doing different from an ad agency. So, for instance, after the fifth or sixth year of existence, we had several large assignments where the clients came and said, "We are coming to you because we know that my ad agency can't do this." Because the kind of research you do, and it created some very lovely protocols for very creative research. So that will help us. So that was the starting point. Over time, of course, I actually once asked Andy, I wish he was here to hear this. And I said, "Andy, look, we have to become one of the world's best. And for that, you have to become one of the world's best. And will you take on Ted Levitt?" And he paused for a moment and then he said, "Yes." Right? So we were headed in that direction that we will be small, but we
Hmm.
will be one of the best in our business. That is what we were slowly evolving towards.
Hmm.
Then, if you look at if I was to carry on the logical answer to your question, then of course 2016 is when we lost both Andy and Nalish Patil. So these are two mavericks. One kind of created this very durable structure and protocol for strategy, and one created this very durable and protocol for what we call identity. You know what identity is, and we'll talk about it in a moment.
Hmm.
So 2016 is when that was a big inflection point for me, and I had to find a way about restoring our edge despite this loss. So that
Hmm.
is something that I did. One of the things I did was we codified Andy's work so that there were no errors
Hmm.
in the process. And in the case of Nalish, it was easier because we found a lot of youngsters who could live up to the idea of identity.
Hmm.
The last one, you know, the last disruption or the last inflection point has been 23 with AI.
Hmm.
We have started looking at ways of incorporating AI to either scale up or to change the way we operate. Because remember, we have data of 400 brands with us, after all.
Hmm. Hmm.
So there is an opportunity for us to use that uh, and create something using AI. So that's not a direct answer to what vision, but
Mhm.
Those are the three phases we have been.
Mhm. Mhm. Since you're mentioning AI, I think one of the opportunities there for you, you mentioned these 400 brands, is these brands are mostly, I would imagine, from the Indian market context, Indian consumer context. Not all of them, but
Correct.
most.
Most.
And with AI, how good AI performs is entirely a function of the training, the data that it is
Correct.
trained on. And so the fact that you have sort of Indian data, Indian consumer and market data, could
Yes.
make, AI much more market relevant, much more
Absolutely.
effective for you. So that's a
That's
huge advantage that you have. Yeah.
yeah. That's something that it could actually create a kind of a moat uh, with that amount of data that we're sitting on.
Hmm.
Mm. So long as I don't suffer from memory loss, I was involved in the research for all 400 brands. So there is something that I can bring to the table.
Well, you may forget something, but the AI will never forget something.
So, Rajiv, may I request you, as one of the best brand practitioners in the world, to spring a surprise and to show to everybody the two books that we have written and designed and sent to you, and you will have your own comments about them. So if you can officially
I
officially announce that.
With pleasure. So, as Karen mentions, there are two books, and I'm going to hold them close to my chest so that the Zoom camera can get a good picture of them. But the first one is the second edition of this Identity book that Karen can speak to in a minute. And I launched this or relaunched this with pleasure since this is the second edition. So that's the first one. And the second one is the fourth era of branding, a new book that Kiran just wrote, which again I read with great pleasure and interest, and we can talk about both these books. But again, I launched this with pleasure and with best wishes to Kiran and to Chlorophyll, both of them.
Thank you, Rajiv, from all of us at Chlorophyll, as well as our other well-wishers. Um, I was, I was in the word that springs to mind is trepidation. So, what era of branding has been written by a practitioner, right? I don't
Mhm.
have the heft or the depth of research that you have access to and you have personally conducted over the years. So, as a practitioner's conceptual book meant to be a thought starter, because it's some people have said it's sketchy, you needed greater depth. But what was your first response to a practitioner writing the fourth era of branding?
I mentioned that I am working on a book myself
Oh,
called Building Strong Brands, and in fact, the ending chapter is called The Future of Brands and Branding. And by coincidence, when you sent me your book, I had just finished my chapter and thinking about the future of brands and branding. So all those ideas and concepts are very much floating in my mind as well. And I thought the book that you have just written is very insightful, very thought-provoking. I may not agree with every single date
correct.
that you have, that this era starts in 2020 and so on. But the macro trends and the forces that you identify and speculate about are right on. And so I fully agree with pretty much everything you've said. There are a few thoughts that I had
Sure.
that I'd like to bring up for discussion, purely for discussion, so that you
Good,
can
good.
think about them and the audience can think about them.
Yes, yes.
Um, and I've noted down three things. One is, you emphasize in this book the dominant role today of consumer to consumer social media, that we lived in a world when we grew up, brand to consumer, one way legacy media, and now it's been swamped in most cases by consumer to consumer social media and the web. And of course, consumers get all the information they need from websites and review sites and so on. So there's so much more information out there. So I think the first thing that The phrase that I am running into a lot that I didn't see in your new book is this word that everybody uses of brand authenticity, that consumers are
Okay.
looking for authenticity, which is the sense of brand integrity, brand trust, brand credibility. And you mentioned those, you certainly mentioned those. Um, and you, towards the end of your book, you talk about this new expectation and demand for brands to be sustainable and to be
Yeah.
seen as sustainable. And I fully agree with that. I think it's going beyond sustainability though,
Okay.
because you mentioned AI. And as we move into this new era of AI, consumers are going to become much more conscious of the extent to which brands and marketers are using data that
I
is coming from consumers. And that's going to raise the concern with privacy, I think, to a whole new level. And so I think uh, the need for brands being sustainable is going to go up one level, because now it's going to be combined with to what extent the brand a uh, respect my privacy, and respect the data that they get from me. And so I think both of these will go to a higher level. And the word that was coming to my mind was, do they see the brand as being a responsible corporate player?
very
Because the responsibility side covers sustainability, but then also covers, their use of data. And
correct.
can you trust this company to do the right thing? I
Yes.
mean, that's sort of the higher level concept that I think might become more into focus as we move
Yes.
on. So that's one thought that I had. Uh, the second one, again, with social media and consumer to consumer media, is that because of this transition from mass legacy one-way media to this new media, is we all now live in very fragmented media universes. Partly because the media use these algorithms to feed us material that is consistent with what we already have shown that we like. And so this sense of fragmentation is what I think is leading in part to the polarization that we see in societies. And maybe I think it's true in India as well.
Right.
It's been very true in the United States and in many other European countries. Political polarization, social issue polarization. And one consequence of this polarization is that it's increasing the sense of tribalism and the extent to which consumers belong to and believe that they belong to and want to belong to these tribes and subcultures. I think that's a phenomenon that's going on uh, quite significantly. And in fact, one of my colleagues here at the Ross Business School, Marcus Collins, just wrote a book called For the Culture. And he makes the point that because of this, brands today need to uh, become markers of identity and tribal identity and subcultural identity more than in the past.
I see.
And so the implication is that for brands to develop a close relationship with consumers, you need today to be able to speak the insider language, the inside language of the cultural language of tribes and subcultures much more fluently than was necessary, maybe 10 years ago. So that's an interesting second order impact, I think, of social media and the fragmented media
Correct.
that we live in.
Correct.
Uh, so that's sort of a second idea. The third thing, and I'll end with that, is I think one negative side effect of social media and influencers. And with influencers, we now have these, I'm sure you know, these creator brands that they're
Correct.
called. All these influencers creating their own brands in the beauty business and the fashion business and beverages and foods and so on. And I think a lot of people now on the entrepreneurial side and the marketing side are seduced into believing that to make a brand successful, all you need is an influencer, someone with high awareness and likability and personality and an image and so on. And I think that's such a mistake,
Right.
because I think that while these creator brands and influencer brands may gain initial awareness and trial
Yeah.
because of that reputation and that they have, it's not a guarantee of the inside quality of the product.
Right.
I
Right.
think people are forgetting that the true foundation of brands that stay strong for a long time is, in fact, the inside quality leadership and innovation and so on. It's
Right.
not just
Right.
the trappings that a chlorophyll can give you, but it's what's deep inside that really matters. And I think people are forgetting that. And then you have these reminders. You look at how Nike is suffering this year because it stopped its product innovation, and these new brands called, On and Hoka and so on. They've
Okay.
been,
Yeah. Yeah.
they've been taking sales and share from Nike. And then you look just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, at the meltdown at Intel. And, Intel was such a dominant B2B brand and B2C brand,
Correct.
but because it ceded all the technical leadership territory to NVIDIA and
Yeah.
AMD, Intel is a shell of itself, and the
Correct.
brand is nowhere today. So this
Yeah.
is just a reminder that despite the social media, despite the influencers, what really matters in the past and will matter in the future is the inside true quality, strength, and leadership of the brand. So that's sort of
100%.
my concluding thought.
Any thoughts on identity? You mentioned earlier that even that needs to evolve, this idea of an identity.
Well,
It's the second.
yeah. So again, this book, the identity book, it begins with the idea that brands started as marks of ownership, with the cattle and the pottery and so on, and then marks of trust and confidence, and then the idea marks, the point that is made, all of which is very, very true.
Right.
Um, I think, again, the two further elements of evolution of what brands are and can be might be that some brands, more in the B2C space than the B2B space, have managed to become what the ad agency people used to call love marks.
Right.
And I just mentioned this brand love idea, and there are some brands that have evolved even higher into becoming brands that consumers truly love and
Correct.
are not willing to move away from.
Correct.
And in fact, after we published our brand love work, we got a call, and we did a big consulting project for a company that's the largest smartphone company in the world. I won't give you the name, but they are very concerned that one of their competitors has much stronger brand
Yeah.
love connections than they do. And they asked us if we had any suggestions for them. So that's an example of how it really matters in
Correct.
the real world. So I think that's one element that you might want to consider as you go forward with the book,
Sure.
this brand love thing. The other one is the idea that I mentioned 5 minutes ago, is that some brands are being related to by consumers as marks of identity, tribal identity, subcultural identity. And that's another direction in which some brands in some markets are evolving. So those are two thoughts for the future.
Fantastic. And this book that you're writing about cool brands, etc., will it also bring in the impact of AI in the field of branding?
So the book is building strong brands. And so, yes, it does cover the brand love part, the brand coolness part, but it focuses really the main message that I put into the book is that your perceptions of quality are the most important perceptions that a brand needs to have. So that's sort of the key point that I make in the book. But yes, to your question, the book ends with the future of brands and branding, within which AI is discussed quite
Yeah,
extensively.
fantastic. So, Rajiv, how do I say thank you to you?
You're most welcome. You don't need to say thank you to me, and I would love to continue to engage with
Yes,
Chlorophyll in the future, and
we'll
let's
miss you
just
by
keep
a
it.
whisker if you had got you back in Mumbai like last time. So I'm going to say thank you in a very reverse way by uh, giving away a secret about you to my audience.
Okay, well, now you have me anxious now. What is the secret?
So Rajiv's second career is going to be jazz. So once he graduates academia, I think he's going to, and I'm very sure he's going to bring the same quality of excellence to music as he has done to branding. And when you're in Mumbai next, you're going to be a big guest of ours, and we are going to find a very unique way of saying thank you to you. Thank you.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I look forward to that. Great.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Karen, and good luck with this celebration and with the future of chlorophyll.
Thank you. See you soon, Rajiv.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Bye bye.